Hello, I'm Bob Smearfack, but not really. This series is designed for theological seminary students with approaching exams who have not had time to read the Bible, and for the end of days crowd who believe Armageddon is both a coming holy war and Bruce Willis's best work ever. Matthew chapter 24. Let's go. In this chapter, the Big J left the church house after completely melting down on the scribes, the Pharisees, and the entire citizenry of Jerusalem. For whatever reason, his main crowd saw this as a good time to give him a tour of the grounds. Now, either Jesus knew something they didn't, or he had a good eye for the structural integrity of buildings, because as they strolled around, he said to the fellas, "Notice all this stuff? I'm telling you for real, there aren't going to be two of these blocks still stacked on top of each other. It's all going down." Cut to the Mount of Olives, and the J-Man was kicking back. The fabulous Jesus boys caught up with him for some personal FaceTime and asked him to spill. "When's all that stuff you said gonna happen? And how are we gonna know when you're about to make re-entry? And how do we know when this whole place is about to go boom?" So he told them, watch your back and don't let anyone play you, because a lot of people are gonna roll up to you selling the Jesus brand and try to play the Messiah card, and they'll rope in a ton of people. And he told them they'd catch wind of military conflicts, but not to sweat it because that stuff had to go down. It wouldn't mean game over yet. He said, yeah, whole countries and dictatorships would go at it with each other. There were also going to be raging food shortages and epidemics and seismic activity in various locations. But that was just going to be the start of some really crappy times. Then he told them some people were going to turn them into the authorities and kill them. This could have become the long, awkward silence when the Jesus boys nervously thumbed through the brochure to see if they should have known that was coming. But Jesus didn't give them time. He threw another log on the fire, explaining that every country in the world was going to hate them because of him. And he said a lot of bogus clairvoyants would get really popular and trick a bunch of people. And that since a large swath of the population was going to be Breaking Bad, the amount of love going up to El Supremo was going to hit historic lows. But if you could squeak across the finish line, you were going to make it into the Sky House. And this news about God's program was going to get global airplay so everybody would know it. And then the shit was going to hit the fan. So he told them, when you catch a glimpse of that awful thing that's going to happen to Jerusalem, which the prophet Danny brought up a while back, you know the one I'm talking about, plant your feet on holy ground. Then Jesus threw some tips out there for what to do in different situations when it all went south. If you're in Judea, beat it to really high ground. If you're on the roof, don't even go downstairs to grab your go bag, just get the hell out. And if you're doing some farming, do not go home to collect your wardrobe. And he hinted that if you were pregnant, you were screwed. And if you were nursing a baby, it was gonna suck. And neither of those in a good way. And he told them to get in their requests to God that it wouldn't go down in cold weather or happen on that day of the week when you could get killed for working. Because the shitstorm was going to be massive. More massive than at any time since the earth still had that new car smell. Or, frankly, more massive than it would ever be after that. And if it weren't for the fact that it wasn't going to rain shit forever, everybody would be toast. But it wasn't going to, so that the people who were supposed to would survive. So then he flagged a few important warning scenarios regarding imposter messiahs. If any dude said, check it out, there's the Messiah, they weren't supposed to fall for it. Because there would be guys doing such good Jesus impressions that, if it were possible, even people who were already saved would take the bait. He told them, hey, look, I've said it all before. But if people are going on about how there's a Jesus out there in the sand dunes, don't go scrambling off to the desert. And if they say, look here in this special room, it's a Jesus, don't go running down the hall. Because, he said, his second coming was going to be like greased lightning. And wherever the dead animal is, that's where the scavenging birds will be. He didn't explain that last bit, but one can find long, heated arguments about its meaning all over the internet. Bring a sack lunch, spend the day. But he said right after the shitstorm ended, the star at the center of our solar system would experience a major drop in wattage. That or an eclipse, one of the two, he didn't specify. But it was going to get dark. He also said the moon was going to stop emitting light. And by emitting, we'll assume he meant reflecting, since that's the only relationship the moon and light seem to enjoy in reality. But if that wasn't enough, 10 to the 24th stellar objects, that's all of them, were going to fall straight toward Earth, which is wild, because for an object to fall, the other object has to have enough mass to tip the balance of gravity between them. So either the Earth was going to grow massive enough to yank in the stars, or he was waxing metaphorical about some of these events. Whatever, the mojo of the entire universe was going to take a whack at the knees. Then the big Jesus signal was going to appear up in the Sky House, and everybody down here was going to become quite upset. And they'd see Dr. J making his way in, riding a really souped-up, tricked-out Cloudmobile. Then the J-Man would cue his squadrons of celestial wingmen with a big horn section. And they were going to fan out and run a dragnet for every saved person everywhere. Now, Jesus might have felt he was laying too much heavy shit on the boys. Or maybe he still hadn't eaten since his misadventures in the orchard the day before. We don't know. But but we do know he decided to go figurative and spin them a parable about a fig tree. He said, you know summer's on its way when Mr. Fig Tree is still soft and getting all leafy. He said, connect the dots here. When you see all that stuff I talked about before, that's how you know it's all coming down the pike. He told them, listen close. All these action items are going to get checked off the list before this generation is up. And any modern theologian worth his or her apologetic salt will tell you he was referring not to the present, this generation, but to the this generation in which this stuff was going to go down. So don't even think about it. Then he dropped some knowledge about the contents of the universe. They had an expiration date, but anything he said would be written in permanent ink forever. Although he said the world's expiration date was not public information. In fact, even the celestial angelic entourage couldn't access that data. It was password protected on the God drive behind an impenetrable firewall. End of story. So he told them his re-entry was going to be reminiscent of that time when that one binge drinker won the flood lottery and got to take his family and a lot of other biomass on a free cruise to the top of Mount Ararat. Everybody back then was carousing and getting hitched and had no idea they were about to find out the hard way just how long they could tread water. Jesus said that's pretty much how the season finale of the world was going to play out. He said when it all happened, you'd see scenarios such as a couple of guys are out farming and one of them goes poof. Or two ladies might be making wheat into flour and one of them looks up and she's like, where'd she go? He warned them, look out because you don't have a clue when my re-entry capsule is going to drop. He explained it this way. If a guy who ran an estate knew in advance when there would be a burglary, he'd be ready for that shit and would foil that heist. Jesus said keep your eye on the ball because just when they think he won't be coming, that's when he'll be coming. Which conjures a thought experiment. As long as someone, somewhere, at any given moment thought he was coming back right then, would he never come back? Anyway, he said it's the type of clever guy with kick-ass loyalty that gets put in charge of taking care of all the peeps in the house and making sure lunch is served on time. That guy is gold if the boss rolls in and catches him in the act of getting the job done. Jesus said, I mean it, the boss is going to promote that guy to be global managing director of everything he owns. But if the dude is an asshole and decides he knows when the boss is going to get back and when he won't, and then starts bitch-slapping the other employees and going out to dinner with the alcoholics, then the boss man is going to show up out of the blue one day and cut him in half. Then he'd throw that guy to the same wolves as all the people who don't practice what they preach, and there would be plenty of boo-hooing and tooth enamel grinding. After an apocalyptic knowledge bomb like that, Jesus could have taken the opportunity to paint a big yellow line straight to the correct interpretation of its meaning. After all, hundreds of denominations were destined to enjoy condemning each other's members to hellfire for espousing competing doctrines of eschatology, encompassing the rapture, the tribulation, and the second coming. There would be a lot of players on the court, including historicists, preterists, and futurists, with subgroups like pre-tribulationists, pre-wrath tribulationists, seventh trumpet tribs, mid-tribs, post-tribs, or even no tribs, who thought if you believe in a literal trib, you're going to hell. It could have been the perfect time for Jesus to clear up the trouble with tribs, but it wasn't. Because he didn't. Perhaps he was caught up in the rapture of the moment, or maybe it would have been tantamount to messing with people's free will. Hey, if there's no risk in getting it wrong and going to hell forever, how great could heaven be, right? Next in this series, we'll move on to Chapter 25. Spoiler alert. If you're a girl who's never had sex before, and you're on your way to watch a dude get married in the middle of the night, bring extra batteries for your flashlight. Think. As always, I'm not a religious figure, but if you want me to save you or damn you to hell, I'll do my best.